Um, Hello, everybody. Welcome to this podcast. I'm delighted to be joined today by Doug Betts. Doug is the owner and founder of Sure Betts HR. He's a real visionary in how HR should be run. He understands that it's a blend of putting together this huge data, giving data meaning real time, and being able to pivot. That pivot is essential in today's ever-changing world. Uh, Doug and I have recently been talking about all the changes we're seeing around, do we go back to work? Do we not? What happens if someone wants to come back to work and doesn't have the vaccine? And how is all of this impacting line managers? Doug, welcome today. It's great to see you.
Yeah, thanks, Sam.
So let's just dive straight into it. We're seeing lots of posts, some of them frankly quite vanilla on what needs to be done with people returning to work. I love your stand and authenticity on this. What are you seeing happening right now? What's working? Let's look at what's working well first, shall we?
Okay, well, I think what is working well is that there are businesses out there, the majority are looking to do some kind of blend between home working, flexible working, agile working, and being based in an office and trying to get the best of both worlds rather than saying it's got to be one way or it's got to be the other. So I think that is a real positive, but I think there's still companies out there who don't quite know what kind of changes they need to make or how to even make them or where to begin. And I think this is where I can really come in and help businesses get to where they need to be.
Doug, that's great, and that's exactly why I wanted to have this conversation with you today, just to keep it real and bring it to life. Um, So we've talked a little bit about what's working well. What are you seeing that's going horrifically wrong right now, and why?
Okay, I think what's going wrong, it's people who are either burying their head in the sand and they're not actually giving it any consideration at all, or they're living in a fantasy world that everyone's going to come back to an office or a workplace and work from 9 till 5 and be suited and booted and be okay with it. Because what the last year has shown us is that people have appreciated the work-life balance. They've appreciated spending more of their time doing valuable things for them as well as work-wise and not wasting time commuting. I think they've enjoyed the fact that they can work perhaps different times of the day and get their best work done at a time that works well for them. And I think it's a disaster for companies to think that that can't continue in some way, shape, or form, because I think if you don't make those changes in your business, then you're going to lose your top talent elsewhere. And they'll
Yeah,
just work for
and
people who will provide that.
yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting, isn't it? I was talking to someone yesterday, in fact, and if you look at the current generation that's coming into the workforce, they actually communicate through WhatsApp. So
Mm.
it's even less than, you know, Zoom calls. It's even less. So there's it just doesn't add up, does it? It's just not stacking up.
It really doesn't, and it seems quite archaic now, the idea of everybody in the country putting on a smart suit or putting on an overall, driving to or taking a bus to their place of work and being there for 7 hours a day between set times and then going home again. It's just not making sense at all. And when you look at the millennial generation coming into the workforce, they want something different from their workplace experience. They want to feel that they're valued, they want to feel that they're making a contribution. They're not going to be necessarily hanging around in the same role, the same company for life. They'll come in, they'll find a job, and they'll say, okay, that's great, now give me more. And they're going to want something that fits in with their lifestyle and their wants and needs. And I think 20 years ago, we did need to go to a physical office because we had whiteboards, we had filing cabinets, we had fax machines, we had a lot of paper-based systems, and we didn't have broadband at home. So therefore, it was impossible to work from home in the way that we are now 20 years ago. But the world has moved on. Everyone has proven in the last year that it is possible to get what you need out of your laptop or your mobile and to communicate in a different way. And yet the work still gets done and people are still productive. So I think it's a tricky one when companies try and hang on to this idea of the past. And I think there's a fear with some company leaders or directors about trusting their workforce in the fact that they can't always see what they're doing. And I think for me, it's just so important that you measure people's work on their outputs rather than how many hours a day they're seen to be in the office or seen to be behind their desk.
Doug, and you and I had this conversation last week, and I love that. And we looked at the 4 different elements of this, didn't we? I'd love for you to bring that to life for everyone, because I've been thinking about that ever since we talked about it.
Yeah, so there's potentially 4 ways that people can return to some form of normality after the pandemic is easing off. So the 4 ways. The first one is it's on a scale of 1 to 4. You've got different extremes. So at number 1, you've got what I call the Goldman Sachs approach, which has been publicised quite widely in the paper, which is everybody back to the office. 9 to 5, suited and booted, no flexibility at all, it's as it was. I think the second form, which a lot of companies are adapting, is a bit of agile working. So this is where you're trying to combine the best of the office with the best of being at home. And I think, there is an argument for going into the office for collaboration, meeting people, social interaction. And if you're at home and you perhaps haven't got the best office set up, or you're in a small space, then yes, there's a very valid reason for wanting to sort of go away and do that somewhere else. So this is perhaps where you might work 2 days a week in the office, 3 days a week from home, or the other way around. And I think a lot of companies are aiming towards that. Taking it to the next step is about working from anywhere. So this is where it is essentially you can work what hours you like in a location of your choice. So long as the work gets done, it's fine. So it's sort of taking it to an extreme where perhaps you might only go into the office once a month, once a week, but it wouldn't be on a set day or at set times. It could be that you might want to go and watch a film in the cinema in the afternoon for 2 hours, but then come out and check your laptop and your phone and do a couple of meetings while you're sitting in the coffee shop afterwards, and you work for a couple of hours. So it's sort of taking it not just about being home working, but appreciating that people can work potentially from anywhere, depending on what else they've got on and what they're doing. And then the fourth extreme, or fourth example, which is the other extreme to the Goldman Sachs line of it, is where it's offices have shut altogether for a company. They've not got a headquarters anymore, but they do rent a space. So there's a lot of companies now I see springing up, hiring up office space on a pay-as-you-go basis or on a subscription basis. So you just hire a desk or a small meeting space for as many days in the week or weeks in the month as you need. So that way, if you do want to meet your colleagues for meetings, you can do, but they emphasise that that's the exception, not the norm. So they don't expect people to go into an office at all and just sit behind a desk for 7 hours a day.
Yeah, and it's exciting, isn't it, to see how all of this is going. There's also a big implication on recruitment. And with all 4 of those cases, there's plus and minuses. How are you advising your clients right now in that regard?
I think the best advice I'm giving them is that they need to keep an open mind about how they recruit. So traditionally, people will have gone for somebody who's local geographically to their office, who they know is not going to get held up in traffic in the morning, and will come in and be that person. But I think actually this opens up the talent pool considerably compared with where it was. So what it means is that you're able to get talent from anywhere if you're prepared to say to them, okay, well, we only need you in the office once a week, once a month. That really does open it up. And I think people are really expecting to see something like this. So my advice is also put it on your job adverts and say you do flexible working. Now, again, I've worked for companies in the past or had them as clients where their idea of flexible working was making people put in the statutory request if they had the right amount of service, and that was just to start and stagger their finish and end times. And I think that level of formality needs to go out the window now, and you need to sort of have a much more open, flexible approach. But flexibility works on both sides. I think in the past, organisations have always wanted people who they deem to be flexible, and by that they mean they'll work lots of unpaid overtime for nothing and be quite okay about it. Whereas now, actually, people want to see flexibility on both sides. So again, I can do my best work at a time of day that suits me in a location that suits me, and I'll still deliver and I'll still be committed to you as a company, but I still get a fantastic work-life balance. Now, I think the other danger is, in the past, exceptional companies were doing this anyway, and it was a real selling point, whereas now the rest of the world is starting to catch up. So it is less of the USP that it once was. But what it does mean is if your company is still quite old-fashioned in its outlook, then it's going to lose out quite a lot.
Yeah, yeah. And it's interesting, isn't it? You know, I've been talking to people in the UK and the US recently, and for example, states like California are already saying, if we tell you you have to come back to work, you're coming back to work. And we're seeing
Mm,
a lot of cases at the moment, you know, across different regions, um, you know, employer versus employee.
mm.
With the UK market in mind, how do we avoid that scenario?
Okay, well, I think the best thing that you can do as a business is to actually, first of all, find out how your employees are feeling about things. And by that, it's about checking in with them regularly, which hopefully they've been doing in the last year anyway, but also not making assumptions and thinking about what they actually might want and listening to them. So I would say pulse surveys are a really good way of doing this, because that way it's like a temperature check on the staff. Don't do an annual staff survey that takes years to get any data out of. Just look into the here and now. I think you also need to avoid a lot of issues coming up by, again, just doing the communication, and also checking for any sort of unusual behaviour as well. So any mental health issues or behaviour that's out of character from somebody's norm, and just to see how people are really feeling about it and what they want and what they're prepared to do. I mean, I've seen evidence that there's some companies in the UK and also some countries that's moving to a 4-day week, but for 5 days pay, and the argument that people are more productive if they have that extra day off. So I think there's different ways and means of looking at this. But yeah, it's not making assumptions. And the other advice I would say is don't do lengthy policies on returning to the workplace, because no one's going to read them and they're not really relevant. But I think just set out some basic protocols and principles rather than actual policies. And from what I've seen around companies at the moment, it's about owning the way you work and putting some of that back to employees. And I think the other area then is getting your culture right and training your line managers, if you're the CEO, about what's expected of them in terms of how they manage people and what they do. Because I think it's all too easy for a CEO to say, yes, I'd love to do flexible working, but not give any thought about how to make it happen and how to change the culture of that company and how to get the line managers on board with it. And I think it's just so important that you lead from the top. So, for example, I think senior managers need to be able to say to me, or to be visibly saying to their teams, yes, I'm going to leave at 3 o'clock today because I've been working since 7, and that's okay. And I think if managers start to pick up and change their behaviours, employees will do the same. For the micromanagers out there, I think it's important to, again, look at them and look at why they feel the need to micromanage, because I think they fear of losing control is what's going to lead in some of these kind of litigious cases, Sam, that you've been mentioning, where you get a conflict because these people are still trying to cling on to some way of doing something that's no longer working and has been proven not to work, and you get the conflict with the employees then. So I think it's open communication that's two-way from the start will go a long way to actually resolving some of these issues. And I know I've just made that sound very simple in terms of the solution, but I said I'd be out of a job if every company got that right all the time.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And certainly what we're seeing is just how important HR is right now. It's and how that role is evolving. It's certainly
Mm,
much, much more than just HR now. Where do
mm,
you see the role of HR going, say, over the next 2 years? Because we're
mm,
not out of the woods yet. There's
no,
a lot of technology that's still changing the world of HR and will
mhm,
continue to impact it. I
mm.
know that you're on the positive side of it. So let's put some positivity into it, because I also know you're a visionary. Where do you see it all going?
Okay, well, I think where I want to see it going, where I think it should go, is HR being taken seriously in the business and being seen as change management specialists to help businesses get to where they want to be. And that's how I advertise my own services to people. We're not administrators. We're not there to push bits of paper around. We're not the welfare department to determine whether somebody's sick or fit enough to be in the workplace. That's just not what we're about and not what we should be about. So actually what I see is a lot of technology coming in and replacing traditional HR roles. So I can see the use of artificial intelligence, so AI, chatbots, doing some of the basic queries. So if an employee wants to know how many days holiday they've got, or where they look for a certain piece of information, that will be dealt with by AI rather than by having to have an individual sitting there. I'm a big fan of good HR systems, and in the last year I've seen some good cloud-based software come out that has enabled people to, obviously, if you're a manager, you can look at your staff's information, and if you're an employee, you can request your holiday while you're on the move. You can use a mobile app. So I see more and more of that coming in to deal with the transactional stuff. And then I think here's where HR need to be good change agents and be taken seriously in the business. And in the last year, we have proven our worth in businesses because we've been able to show people in a crisis how to manage. And we've been able to help people be there. We've been that sounding board for CEOs and MDs who need advice about what to do because they're faced with an unprecedented situation they've never had to deal with before. And again, this is another passion of mine. I would love to see HR have that seat at the table or at the board level. And I don't think that's a seat that should be demanded. It's got to be earned and it's got to be respected. I mean, traditionally, as we've seen, that people who get the top jobs in companies in the C-suite level are quite often coming from a financial background rather than a people one. But I think actually being able to interact, know how people work, and see how people can help a business. And I think that's just so important to get that out there and to be seen and to have that influence. So I think the way I see it going, it should be more top level change management and helping companies make positive transformations in the way that they want to do it. And I think the way that we can add our value is that we spend time with people like I do. I spend time with my clients. I listen to what they actually want to do, and they might not know what they want at the start of that conversation, but they do by the end because I'm asking them the right questions to find out a little bit more about their business, where they are now and where they actually want to go in the future. And then I can help them get there, and not just get to now, but also help with like 5-10 years down the line, because I think it's so important that companies always have an idea about where they want to be long term. And as we've talked about, Sam, companies are in different cycles or different stages of their life cycle, and very much depending on what the owners want to do with it, whether it's grow it, or look to sell it, or even shrink it. But it's just important that it's there. With my knowledge, because I'm a hands-on person as well, I'm good at the operational stuff as well as the strategic thinking. I really know how to sort of give them the nuts and bolts to get to where they want to be and what they want to achieve.
Fabulous, Doug. You really are someone that I admire in the HR world. I've always described you as someone who is unique in your ability to be able to give big data meaning and give it meaning quickly. I'm conscious of your time today, so as a final thought, what 3 tips would you give to business owners today that will help them navigate the next few months?
I think firstly, keep an open mind, and try and stay ahead of the game. See what you think is coming up and have plans ready. Don't leave it all to chance. Secondly, make sure you're talking to and communicating with your employees, your workforce, your managers. Make sure that you're celebrating their achievements and making sure that you're still in touch with them and that you're keeping morale at an all-time high. And thirdly, don't think you have to go through this on your own. As the MD or CEO of a business, you're not expected to be the world's leading expert in IT, finance, marketing, HR, sales, facilities, all of those functions of a business. You can actually go out there and help other people, get help from other people to come to the right solutions for you and your business. So I think although your business is your baby, go to the people who are experts in those areas where you need the help, and don't be afraid to ask for it and listen to their ideas, because they will help you get to where you want to be.
Doug, as ever, that's fabulous. I know you've got quite a few talks coming up, and you're currently onboarding quite a number of new clients in the technology space, which is apparent and makes complete sense with all your knowledge. I'm sure we'll be doing another programme soon. There's lots still to talk about. But lovely to see you today, and I'll see you soon.
All right, thanks very much, Sam.